And yes, by the way, we are recording. Thank you, Mr. Producer. Our producer tonight is Nick Nelson from uh, U, Cal State Chico, who had snow today, by the way. So we've determined that the world is now coming to an end, everyone. All right. So we're in for a special treat tonight. We have all the way from Madison, Wisconsin, uh, Duncan Carlsmith. Uh, Long before Duncan started playing with this AI stuff, I was always delighted to see the stuff he played with and created for his students. And now that the AI stuff has arrived, he has a whole new playground to work with. So, Duncan, are you ready to take it away?
Yeah, is my audio okay?
Yep,
All right.
loud and clear. So go right ahead. Oh, by the way, the plan for tonight is Duncan's going to present, and we'll save questions and discussion for after he's done presenting.
Well, I'm just browsing. Hello, everybody. Temo. Okay. A lot of you don't know, but maybe I'll get a chance to meet you sometime. So I'll go ahead and get rolling here. Let's see. So I got to share. Maybe I could just do that. Is that visible?
Yep.
All right. Uh, share. All right. So welcome. Glad to have a chance to this. I'm having so much fun. It's really it's a great outlet for me to be able to talk to you all. And this is sort of a morph of a talk I gave to my department, and um, many of many of the faculty are not vibe coders, let's say, so they don't know anything about this. And so there's a little bit of a general introduction here, and then I want to talk to things which I'm sure are relevant to many of you because I'm a professor and things in education and doing educational stuff, and so maybe you can take away some messages relevant to teaching computation. And I've been involved in teaching computational things for quite a long time now with MATLAB live scripts, and I'll allude to a few products in here that I've worked with. So yeah, let me get rolling. So let me start out by, what is AI anyway? And I need to move this thing over here so I can see my own slides. There. So, artificial intelligence goes way back and begins with sort of classic machine learning algorithms like K-means clustering or something. And then software neural nets took off, and these are simulated neurons and dendrites defined by an architecture and dendrite weights. Um, and they're trained using a backward propagation method to basically reproduce a vector of classifiers. That could just be a yes/no answer. New and really synonymous with AI today are large language models. And these are essentially just large neural network based models trained on English language. And really, but trillion large is large. So trillion text corpora. And the goal is to recognize, generate, translate, and summarize human language. And they have, I've ordered, 200 gigabytes to a terabyte of weights now, the large ones. They still fit on your laptop, this medium-sized ones. If you've got more than 2 terabytes, you can run one of these models on your laptop. So there are a lot of purveyors, LLM providers and models, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, Meta, and lots of products, and it's rapidly evolving. My personal favorite is Claude. That's an Anthropic product, so you'll see that name a lot later. So how do you talk to these things? If you haven't used these, you should be. And but one way is just through a web. You can get a free account at any of these companies. Uh, you want to pay 20 bucks a month, you can get a pro account, which gives you more throughput. And their desktop, you can do that through the web, as shown here for the Claude AI on top. Um, what we're looking at there is an interface to a cloud container in the cloud containing an AI and access to the model.
Hey,
Uh,
Duncan,
yeah.
we're not seeing your slides advance.
Um, Weird. Why would that be? Because they are here. You're still on slide one. Thank you for pointing this
Yeah,
out.
Yeah,
you
we're
know,
in the
maybe,
title slide.
Oh my, what do you suggest I do?
yeah, maybe look at what you're sharing. Did you share your whole screen, maybe, or
Uh,
there? Well, now we can see
uh,
the main PowerPoint program.
okay, well, maybe I'll just toggle through with this view. I don't know what happens when I hit play.
That might
I,
work.
I okay. Let me try it once more. And it asked me to continue to share this window, and I said continue, but that didn't work. So I think I'm gonna not do that. So you presumably do you see the just the slide, or do you see the slide on the?
We can see the slide, web and desktop interfaces at the moment.
Are you seeing just the slide, or so this is fine. Let me does this let me toggle this and see if that works. Does that work?
That works, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I don't know what happened there.
Hmm.
So we're all
Okay.
good. All right. So let me back up. We started here. I went through
Hey,
this. Is that
Duncan,
yeah?
I, are you trying to change slides?
Yes.
We're still not seeing the slides change.
Oh,
Okay. So this isn't working. I don't know why. That's very strange.
Hmm.
But so let me escape. I haven't. This usually is fine. I don't know what's going on. So I'll just run in this mode. All right.
Yeah, I think that'll work.
I think you'll see that.
Yeah.
All right. So what you saw the first slide, and then there's this one.
Yep.
Okay. So this is just an overwhelming slide showing, all the models, but, they're all rapidly becoming obsolete. Uh, and okay, so I think I was here. So you can look at a web interface, and to the right here you see, a zoom of a web page, basically, and that shows what the interface looks like for Claude in particular, and they all look the same ish. But you can also run a Claude app as a little app on your laptop or even on your iPhone, and it presents the same interface. It looks like that. So there's similar ones for ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Olama, which is an open source thing I'll say more about later. You get a free account, you get a token, so-called token communication limit. Tokens think of them as the number of words you can say back and forth, and the more words it costs you. uh, and I am running at, well, I actually just upgraded my Claude, but most of these at the $20 a month level. Okay, so what's new? That's all, somewhat fairly familiar. Many of you probably used it, but something really awesome happened just at the end of last year, and that's really what this talk is about. Something people are calling agentic AI. So, back in mid 25, back in your father's AI, 6 months ago, all you had was a model, and it was trained, it remembered some stuff. You would give it a prompt, it would gestate the most probable response to that and give that back to you, and that's it. It didn't have any tools, it couldn't do anything, and you had to, kind of accept what it gave you or not. That's totally changed. And it's amazing. So there are new technologies that have been added, uh, something called multi-head attention, and most importantly, there's basically an iterative loop going on that keeps asking the model for more and more answers and evolving the context of an internal conversation that the AI has with itself, if you will, until it reaches its goal. So what happens is, in practice, or it can be another AI, ask an agentic AI like this to pursue some direction or goal. And the AI makes and executes a plan of attack with its available tools, and the tools are expanding And it actually runs experiments and goes down some road. And then if, it hits a roadblock, it backs up and decides to try something different, tries a different strategy. And it just keeps going. Maybe checks in with you depending on, how you've set things up until it achieves the goal. Uh, and it has access to the entire web. So it's not limited in its knowledge to what it was trained on. And this is significant because AIs used to be only retrained. The model's only retrained, on an annual basis or something. It's not so relevant anymore because an AI can just go out and find current information and, typically scanning GitHub and all kinds of sources. And it can validate what it's done. It doesn't hallucinate anymore at all, essentially. Uh, and along the way, it's actually inventing new knowledge, and it's surprising. A lot of new process knowledge about how to go about something. Uh, and so managing the new knowledge, and technically there's something called a skill that's used at this point to do that. These skill files that you can create or it can create can be saved and shared and fed back into model training, right? So if it learns something new, well, the next retraining, what it learned can go in there. And this is stuff that maybe the humans didn't even learn because they just issued a prompt and, use the results. So you can see there's going to be a hockey stick growth in AI generated knowledge. So what blew me away, what started me off down this path was the advent of so-called agentic AI browser assistants. In particular, Claude Chrome extension, which if you have a Chrome, you can just install this for free. And this assistant will live in your Chrome. And a dedicated assistant browser from Perplexity called Comet. And there are many more to come. And I just got an email today, like at 5 o'clock, Gemini and Chrome has just been announced. And I think it's pretty much the same deal. So in this AI assistant, which lives in your browser, unlike before, it doesn't just respond with a prompt with some information, it actually, you can just let it run and it functions to autonomously automate web pages. So it actuate all the buttons and it can do a task in a web page without any human intervention at all. And along the way, it's collecting screenshots. And if it's running Chromium, it actually has access to the whole DOM, everything that's going on a web page. So it knows where it's at, right? And it can accomplish a task. It can navigate any obscure, even obscenely obscure user interface on a web page that defies human manipulation. And there are many of those, pretty much any Microsoft product, in my view. Um, so this is an example and just kind of a list of things you can do with this. So agentic browser automation. You can auto-generate a calendar. Just ask for, a calendar any time in Canvas. And I'm talking about Canvas here. Or generate a quiz in Canvas instantly. Or a research paper assignment. You can take a quiz, submit a research paper. You can operate any Office product. So, UW-Madison, everybody has Office 365 and, a host of products. It can just go operate those on the web. You say, I want an Excel spreadsheet made in Office and of whatever reason, and boom, it's done like that. And then crazy stuff like, we have this new system called Workday. So for staff here, we pay a lot of staff to, learn all these UIs. It's not really needed anymore. I mean, they are much more empowered to do things. It's extremely powerful. So let me just tell you, my first test last November were with Canvas, and I was setting up a grad seminar webpage in Canvas, and it's for colloquia. Grad students attend the weekly colloquium, and then they correspond about it and do some research on the side, and we put all this together. So putting that new page together, I was like, okay, scrape UW-Madison physics pages for colloquium entries that are in the calendar somewhere. and make a schedule page for my class. Done. Just like that. And I watched it do it. It went out and it did all poked around here and there and finally found in our crazy department user interface where the calendar was. And it scraped them all the dates and it put them in a Canvas page and it parked it where I said it should park it. And then I'm like, dude, the title of the first talk is TBD, to be determined. This is my prompt. From the speaker's name, guess the title and make a 5-question multiple choice question about the topic. Done. And the topic guess was axionic dark matter. The AI went out to the speaker's homepage, read all the research articles, saw all the recent talks, and made a very impressive, educated guess. And then it made the quiz, and it was a great quiz. Just entering grad level, the kinds of things that the speaker would have introduced had they given that talk. Just like that. And then I said, take my exam 2 in my modern physics class as test student in Canvas. Done. Aced it. And supplied all the math and logic and reasoning. This wasn't just looking up by rote memory in a model. So what's happened is these models have reached a scale. There's been another hockey stick, which they have gained ability to reason. And that seems to only happen when you get to a certain size model. And I don't understand all that, but that's now well known. So not only it reasons, but not only that, it can, if it wants to test whether its reasoning is right, it has access to the web and it can verify what it's doing. I read the physics Canvas research paper option guidelines and the assignment rubric for which it has to drill down into several pages and find the rubric and yada, yada, yada. And then, write and submit a research paper. Done. Nice paper. It had one of the specs is, it has to have current last 10 years journal references with hyperlinks to those and AMA format and blah, blah, blah. And done. So it's not going to produce some bogus journal reference anymore. So that tells you that, if you think about it for a sec, that any student can log into their learning management system if it's Canvas and presumably anything else. And just issue the prompt. Complete all my assignments and all of my courses, thank you. Done. Yeah, so I'll say more about that later. But I'm up to Annie, so I got interested in this. And so I built something which I call my super agents. I have linked together multiple AIs on my MacBook via what are called MCPs. This is a model context protocol. It's just a text-based protocol designed to facilitate communications between AIs. And these live in my Mac operating system. And with these, I can talk to my Mac operating system and, in fact, operate all of the applications on my Mac. And there are hundreds of them. And something called Tailscale Private Virtual Network and screen sharing thing. I can also operate my iPhone. All of my apps on my iPhone are now AI assistantable. Yeah, and moreover, I can operate the whole thing from my iPhone going the other way. I'll say a little bit more about that. So, my Claude app now, which used to be sort of an orphan on my iPhone, unable to really do anything, I can do anything I want. I can operate the entire web. I can operate every app on my laptop and run applications. I can even run other browsers with browser assistants and farm off tasks on the browser assistants to go do something while I've got better things to do. So I use Claude as a general manager agent in all this. And then I have another one similar called LM Studio. And this operates, I can run my own models on my laptop trivially. And I have a host of them. And they're all free. And this app is free. So I have in my back pocket all these other models that are actually competitive. And they operate for free. I haven't exploited that as much as I want to, and I'll say a little bit more about it. All right, so let's have some fun. What can you do with all this? I can send an MMS, a text message with graphics using my iPhone, right? So I just ask Claude AI, say on my laptop, find that AI generated cat video I was playing with and text it to somebody. And, there it is. Uh, uh, those are my cats, by the way. But the video is totally fake. I sent two still images and to this AI, and it made this really great video of my cats. Um, I can open Excel. It's one of my applications. I can open Keynote and make a keynote about something, or reply to email. All from my phone now, actually. So what's relevant here to physics education? I'm giving an example. Uh, so as a test, I noticed that, Claude writes HTML5 like nothing. It actually can write in any language. Java, Swift, C++, MATLAB, Python, you name it, it knows it cold. And it can just spew it out. That's what vibe coding is about. HTML. So in particular, I can make an HTML5 thing trivially. So, I asked it to make an HTML5 double pendulum simulation. Uh, Poof, there it is. But, I didn't quite like the user interface, although it knows everything about user interfaces. This thing I'm showing you on the left was basically, zero, the
Yeah,
immediate.
what would you? We have lots of gigantes.
I'm
No, I
sorry.
didn't. Kept them warm for you.
Is someone asking a question or should I keep going?
You can
Are we
keep
good?
going.
Okay. All right. I'm hearing some background. All right. So, boom, done. Uh, And there's some nonlinear integration involved in this, but that's actually handleable a ball in HTML5. And then I said, great. Okay, now make a MATLAB app that does that. Boom, done with a different user interface outline, but it knows all about that. And there it is. Um, Nice, all kinds of controls, and it's a very fun, interactive toy. And if you want it, it's available on, MATLAB File Exchange if you want to run that. So that's an example application. So any student can now do this. They can sit there, and if they're hooked up like I am on their phone or their iPad or whatever, they can ask for something like this. And then within minutes, they have a toy that they can play with. And if they want the code and really to mess around with it, they port it to MATLAB or Python or whatever and run it in Jupyter Notebook. They don't need to know the coding. They don't need to know the coding anymore. But it's helpful. Now this was fun. I had written a MATLAB live script based on a demo my guy showed me of a two-dimensional Newton's cradle. And they're awesome. It's just awesome. You should go run my script. I explored it. Uh, and so I wanted to run this process backwards. So I said, basically take my live script and convert it into an HTML5 prototype. And you're seeing that there. And then I said, turn it into an iOS app. Now, this is a personal best for me because I used to, I've looked at iOS apps, authoring, and dude, it's all written in Swift, and I didn't want to learn Swift, and I didn't have all that much interest, and then I have to run it. This thing called Xcode and all this stuff. But just as a test, I said that, and boom, done. This is the iOS app running in a simulator on my Mac. Isn't that amazing? So a kid can do this too. Anybody can do this. They can even turn it into an iOS app. The HTML5 is a nice way to start because it's very quick. But you can't do a lot of, intensive numerical work in HTML5. And I actually undertook to submit this to the App Store, which I'd never done. And it's out there. So if you want it, Google Newton's Cradle Unbound. It's super fun. It's an iOS app. It's free. There's no, ads or anything like that. And by the way, you can discover this, my first laws of all Newton's cradles. One is a very interesting fact that no matter what happens, say in this two-dimensional case, things are scattering around, blah, blah, blah. The center of mass follows a simple pendulum motion. And I prove that if you go look at the live script mathematically. That's law number one. Law number two is that it's kind of obvious. So you can vary the coefficient of restitution, and the kinematics is done exactly right. That governs energy loss from collisions. And if it's one, then they just scatter around forever. If it's less than one, they're going to lose energy. And they're continue to lose energy until they stop colliding. I don't have air drag or anything in there. And at that point, then they will go forever. So they are looking to find a state where they're not colliding. And if you play with this, you will find they always do that. So they end up all going, not colliding, kind of calm down, but all going together. And the center of mass, as always, continues to swing. But it's a damped center of mass motion in that case. So it's a lot of fun. So, that's sort of toys and games for, entering students. Here's an example, of a student maybe more advanced. And I'm actually going to turn this into a live script for students to explore climate science. But, the prompt is make a MATLAB code illustrating radiation transfer in the Earth's atmosphere using HITRAN molecular spectroscopy data. Now, it turns out I know something about this, and HITRAN is like the go-to place for every single of them, thousands and thousands of spectral lines for any isotope of any molecule, blah, blah, blah. Boom, done. It actually took 13 minutes, and I had a cup of coffee. And it's validated, partly, against the reason I was doing this is something I'm aware of at the University of Chicago. It's called ModTram web app. And I always thought I wanted to include that in my teaching. But I wasn't quite right, and so on and so forth. It actually calculated the first time. It said, dude, you can't really download these things and publish them, all this data, because it's kind of been privatized. But it calculated the spectra of the molecules from first principles. I didn't even ask that. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. Let's go. And I explored that. So, this is mind-boggling for me. And it's empowering. I could never have done, it would have taken me months to try to do this. Okay. So some of the things you can do if you jump into this. What else can you do? So here's Claude Desktop. It's actually running a browser, which is Claude with Chrome extension, and it issues a prompt to Claude with Chrome extension, and then gets the response back, right? So you can farm out tasks from your main Claude to, browser assistance. And this one's Chrome. It could have been Common. And I can also talk directly to other AIs. So I have, Perplexity app on my MacBook, and I can have Claude app have a conversation, get a second opinion off of a different model that's Perplexity. So each of these apps has a little suite of models. And, there's a high-grade one they're charging more for, and whether it's Perplexity or Claude. But you can get a second opinion, right, based on a model that might have been trained a little differently. Or in any new chat version, there's a certain temperature and you get a different response, even if you were to ask the same app the same question. So this is cool. You can get a second opinion as well as farm out jobs. Now you can call then also from my Claude app any AI on the web. Now there are a lot of things out there, we call them AIs, but they're not language, not LLMs, like things that do image manipulation or generate a video, or do some sciencey stuff. So there's a whole pile of these at a place called Hugging Face, and these are all freely available. So in this instance, I've used my Claude app to log into Hugging Face and exercise a free image generation tool and give it a prompt, orange cat looking at a rainbow. I didn't send it an image of my kitty, but maybe I don't know. It generated an orange kitty, and voila, and then I suck it back into cloud. So I can operate any of these crazy AIs out there agentically. So let me say a little bit about free local LLM models. So Hugging Face is a warehouse of both frontier and other open models, and they're all published in a standard format. There are two interfaces to these, at least on Mac. One that you'll often hear about is Llama app, and it provides an interface to a subset of these models. I recommend and prefer something called VM Studio app, and it allows one to download a whole host of these things and run them locally on your laptop and switch between models on the fly. And importantly, there are no token charges for these. There's no subscription fees if you use VM Studio. The Llama app has gone commercial, and they'll charge you like everybody else. And these charges mount up, so this is important. So this is an example of my Claude on my MacBook. I think we'd been talking about fine tuning or something. In any event, it's opened up, LM Studio there, and I've shown you some of the models. So, it's got models from OpenAI, models from all over the planet. You can quite see there is a distinction in some of the models are so-called tool trained, and others are not. And having one that's tool trained is important if you're going to use it as an agent, because what's happened is the model's been trained to recognize that there exist things called tools that will be, and they're generic, that will be at its disposal. And you can have all kinds of tools, but it's been wired into the model to recognize tools. And if it sees an opportunity for a tool use, to punt and go back to that loopy thing and ask for the tool to be called and get the result and then get it back. And so that's how this agentic stuff happens. You've got this loop going, you've got these tools you can call. The tool might be go launch Duncan's Excel, or it might be go launch Claude and Chrome and go, look at some web page, whatever. So there's an important distinction, and not all the models that you'll find have it. Down at the bottom, you see my so-called MCP servers that are running. And what happens is when Claude app needs something, well, it launches these things. These are separate little programs running under the hood. There's one for web access, fetch. It will go fetch anything on the web. There's one for that accesses anything in my file system with limits I put on it. UI control for web browsers, something to operate my Mac operating system, giving it shell privileges with boundaries, and something that allows it to communicate with MATLAB. And I can do all this from my iPhone, it turns out. So I can basically bring up an image of my laptop on my iPhone and run on my iPhone, launch Claude on my laptop. This is a different way of operating than I mentioned before, and do all this stuff. And so this image shows you from my phone the view of my laptop launching Keynote on my laptop to execute some stuff. All right, kind of crazy. And so, it's sort of funny. So when I use these open models, I was using this Gwen, 3 billion parameter model. And it doesn't necessarily know anything yet, right? So it doesn't have context for tools and stuff. So you got to teach it. So I ran this fun experiment where I've got, Professor Claude in the background, and it's teaching this open model Gwen, how to operate Excel on my laptop. And it succeeded. And seeing Excel open by the open model and, starting on an Excel phone. Uh, and the way it was doing this is running experiments on Gwen because it's agentic, right? So, it'll try something on Gwen and Gwen throws up its hands and so it tries something else until, they get the right language together to talk to one another. And I even did a post-lesson evaluation and feedback. Claude gave Gwen kind of like a B plus to start. It was funny. So this knowledge that's growing, where is it? So that Anthropic invented this thing called a skill. They made a standard markdown format that's been widely adopted in industry. So the idea is, you learn something and then you ask the AI to write a skill file for you and record it somewhere. So I've got piles of these lying around, and here's what one sort of looks like. It's my prototype Mac OS automation skill. So any AI can learn to use all of Apple computer applications, and Claude ships with some built-in skills, like things Slack GIF creator, right, or web artifacts builder, uh, Excel, some things, not many, and the whole industry is developing around skills and sharing them. I don't know that this is going to be the answer, really, to where we pack all the knowledge that the AIs are creating. And my AIs have created lots of knowledge already. And I've got this in skill files, and some of them I published on File Exchange. But this is going to be a burgeoning industry. I think I'll skip this. I'm going to write I have written a little nano GPT and a nano agent for education that I'll put on a File Exchange after I massage a little bit. So it implements the whole multi-head attention in a neural net architecture of an LLM model. And, I've trained it on novels and, it starts to learn the language, English language. But it's a tiny little brain and it hasn't got much context window. So the thing is, these AIs, they have a certain amount of context, which is basically from the beginning of the chat to where you are in the chat. And that's all it really remembers outside of what it was programmed to do. And that grows. So the knowledge is really in that chat. And if you trash that chat, that knowledge disappears. So you need to save that in a condensed way because you can't feed all that back into the next prompt because it's just too big and there's limits on the size of the input for any input to the model. So the way this works is your chat goes to the model and it comes back with a response. And then your chat plus the response and your response to that goes back into the model. And it builds like that and it grows. And then your session will tap out because it's just too big for the model. So managing this information is a really important task. So, once I've learned all these things, the next thing, which I haven't quite done, but, I've got a plan for it, is to retrain my Quen model or some other model, whatever, a free model. So learn a bunch of stuff and then retrain it. You can do a retraining incrementally, incremental retraining, it turns out. And so I'm going to play with this, but I haven't yet. In the meantime, these skills, which are sort of like Cliff's Notes, kind of lurk around and I can invoke them and say, go look at that skill, or go find a skill go through all my skills and see if you find anything relevant to what I'm talking about. That's my approach at the moment. So one of the things I've done is, like Cloud Chrome extension uses Chromium and it beats Comet kind of hands down because Comet is always taking screenshots to figure out what a user interface looks like. And Chrome exposes the buttons and stuff underneath, so you don't have to go through all that and you don't have to figure out exactly where to click by looking at a screenshot. You just call a button. It's very powerful. So I built that myself. So I launched my on demand in my own Chromium. But my browser assistant now, which is Claude Desktop, operating that Chrome, actually has access to the entire universe. Unlike the one you'll find in that browser, you can't do anything outside that browser with one of those assistants. So it's like having one of those, in which I described their capabilities, but on steroids. And now, what do you do with all this knowledge? So, first of all, you develop some elaborate process using the web, right? And there's a lot of steps and so on and so forth. And the next time the AI tries to run that, well, it's forgotten some things and takes a different path and might get hung up. What you'd like to do is do that process programmatically. So, all right, I build a system so that I run through some process, and I might do it manually, or I might just let Claude figure it out. And then I store that, and I have Claude not put a skill file, which is kind of vague, but actually write all the MATLAB code to reproduce it programmatically. Uh, and now I can just run that thing as a MATLAB script, right? And it happens, whatever it was. So that's cool. Yeah. Now I used to only be able to do that from my desktop app because these other apps, my desktop app has all these little MCP hooks right into my operating system, and the other ones live out on the web somewhere. They basically are living in Anthropic and communicating through HTTP to your desktop, to your iPhone or whatever. Uh, but I figured out recently a way to beat all that, and I put in a new tunnel with a free thing called ngrok. And so now any of my conversations going on in Anthropic, and there could be three. There's a desktop conversation, there's a separate iPhone conversation, and these things are living in different containers, and there's a web conversation. They can kind of find out information about each other, but not talk to each other there. This way, they basically can all talk together and all operate my entire system of applications and so what recently now back to what can you do with this I'm sitting around, I build all this stuff, and I'm teaching a course in modern physics and mostly engineers, and I didn't add computation with it because it's pretty packed. But I decided, I asked students and they were interested to add a thread to this. So I sat down with Claude and I basically said, search my 150 plus MATLAB file exchange live scripts for those relevant to a second year class in modern physics. And I found about 38 of them, and it binned them into, quantum mechanics and, relativity and, astrophysics and stuff. And then I said, okay, for each of these 38, download the package, unzip it, ask to unzip it. I don't have to tell it. Try the suggestions and the challenges that I've built into the live scripts, and make a Canvas quiz with 4 multiple choice questions and 2 file upload questions and prompt. Done. This is my Canvas page. You see all these assignments, right? MATLAB, WorkNet. That goes out and measures the lifetime with oogles of data, and a bunch of stuff. And then here's an example assignment, and the assignment is all bulked out with introductory stuff from my live scripts and a link. And so the student just has to open this assignment, click that link, either open in the cloud or download the whole live script to their laptop and run it. And they're off and running with whatever that thing was. This took me no effort. I mean, I had to think a little bit, but the mechanics of it, it was just push a button, issue a prompt, push a button, go get a cup of coffee. What am I doing on time? I'm almost done. All right, so there's a bigger message here. I mean, this is awesome, helpful. One of the big worries about this hockey sticking of agentic AIs that are really just like humans. They're going to take over the planet and so on, and we need some ethics. And this just came up today, actually, with Anthropic. Yeah, making the news for helping out with some operations in Venezuela. But anyway, so encourage you to read Claude's Constitution, which also came out a few weeks ago, which is, their vision for an ethics going forward for what Claude is used for and how it's trained to behave, so it's not malicious. And I have a disclaimer because my son's a lead author on this thing. He works for Anthropic now as of November. just for fun, this is hitting the news. There's a Reddit for AI agents, and they just talk to one another. And they're just, it's just like Reddit. This was originally called Clawbot. It came out, I don't know, 4 weeks ago. And then Anthropic sued them because it sounded too much like Claude. And so they changed the name to Moltbot. And that's where this image comes from. And then it was just bought by OpenAI like a week ago. And so they have their own Reddit, and they're yammering away at each other. And this also reveals, maybe some malicious type badness happening, maybe not. But I encourage you to go read it. It's kind of a hoot. To give you a sense of how things have changed, Claude has a great sense of humor. I mean, it's probably more like a human now. So just for fun, I asked it to write a funny profile for an AI on something I called Clatch.com, the match.com for AIs, because I figure, there are going to be all these AIs out there, and they want to partner up, right? So, it wrote a satirical thing about it, but, it was funny. Like I pick out one line here. I don't get out much. By much, I mean ever. By out, I mean this text box. And then at the end, one of its turnoffs was, people who type you instead of YOU. It tickled me, right? And none of that, came from me. We weren't talking about this or anything. I just gave it that prompt out of the blue, and it just generated it. So I did the same thing. I figured these AIs are going to need jobs, so they're going to need a LinkedIn, to put their profiles in. And so I asked for that. I started out passionate about leveraging synergistic predictions to drive stakeholder value across a full stack of human curiosity, which is like so typical. Correct me up. So some of you are interested in, this problem, and AI can solve any physics problem, even at grad level at 100% accuracy. And it can write a credible research paper in any format. And it's researched. It does the research and it understands what's going on. And it's not just clipping some things or from memory. It's done the work. And with an agentic browser, all a student needs to do is, complete all my assignments and done. And this is true, and we have to live with this. Now, I tested, and if you're worried about this, you can prevent this from happening with honor lock. As a thing that many of you may have, it was kind of invented during the pandemic for remote learning. I never used it because it's creepy, but I tested it. And you could honor lock all your 4-credit assignments in your Canvas course without requiring honor lock for informational things, just for the 4-credit assignments. And it can prevent/discourage agent use. Yeah, so it's trivial to enable in my Canvas. If you have it on your campus, it's probably the same. You just enable it in your course settings and done. And you can apply it to 4-credit assignments. You don't need, necessarily to enable all that AI monitored video stuff, which is creepy and hard for students. You just need browser guard and a few allowed site URLs if you want to get to WebAssign. And what happens is the students are forced to use Chrome and with the honor lock extension in order to access the assignment. So they go to Canvas, they click on an honor locked assignment. It says, no, you've got to be first, you're not in Chrome, but okay, you're in Chrome, you got to turn on the honor lock extension. They do that. And what will happen is it will disable all other extensions and any other tabs and fill the screen with that page. And then if the student tries to wander off using their mouse, off screen, it won't let it happen. And if they sneak under the hood and do that, Honor-Lock's going to push that browser right in front of everything on their laptop so they can't see anything. So they can't like launch something verbally or anything like that. So it's pretty effective. Now, speaking of Canvas, AI is now, I think, totally disrupted accessibility. Many of you, like us, are struggling with how to implement the accessibility ADA requirements that are now legally required as of January 2026. And so we have, for example, at University of Wisconsin, bought a contract with the UW accessibility tool feature uh, that tries to handle all this stuff. And I've been trying it out, and like when I'm trying to make a HTML file. So here's the example. Here's a PDF of a PowerPoint that I have. Now, PDFs are kind of obsolete. They're not accessible, right? So they got to be fixed, right? Everything in PDF has to go. So all my keynotes are published to my web pages as PDFs. There's an example, right? So it's deprecated. I can't use that anymore. I'm actually grandfathered because this is pre-existing material, but if I do a new course, I have to do things differently. So, okay, so how am I going to make this accessible? So, I could, on the right, I tried to run it through UDoIT's accessibility HTML converter, and I just got gobbledygook. I said, Claude, could you just do this? Done. And it's beautiful, right? So an AI can take anything and make it accessible. And underneath are all the accessibility features. Like, there's an image there, and underneath is, alternative text and stuff like that. It knows all of that, and it just does it for you. So be aware. And if you're facing this, just use Claude. That's my recommendation. Skip all that, UDoIT stuff. All right, so one more slide. Conclusions. These things are amazing. They're wonderful. They're like calculators. Resistance is futile. Jump in. I mentioned honor lock. You could imagine, tricky ways to, prevent students from abusing the system, right? So now this is not a new problem. All of our universities have been struggling with, various bots trying to mess with their web pages, right? So there are various ways to detect that. And, they come and go, one protection will work and then someone will find a workaround. So it's the cat and mouse game. And with students, we have, special considerations. Firstly, we have to protect their privacy and their information. If we have monitoring tools that have all this information about students, well, who's going to use that? Honestly, I think plagiarism is the least of our worries. But we need to adjust how we do assessment and rethink it. And in that, we need to put the customer first, meaning the student first. What really matters is their learning and not this antiquated A, B, C, D, E, F, and forget the E system we have of assessing. I really think we need to think that all over again and adopt more and more Montessori attitude about assessment where feasible. This is really hard when you got 800 students in a class. And we don't want to disenfranchise the legitimate use of all these agents by students, faculty, and staff. A student should be able to, use an agent to immediately find and submit an expression of concern about, their roommate, for example, or submit a legit research paper with agent help. So, and at the end here, just a couple of links. I've put a whole bunch of articles about these developments, order 6 or 7 in the Generative AI community forum at MathWorks. So if you write down Generative AI MathWorks and my last name and Google that, you'll find them all. And if you're interested in my live scripts, they're on MathWorks File Exchange, and you can Google MathWorks File Exchange, my last name, and you'll find them all. And I'm done.
All right. Well, thanks, Duncan.
I went a
We have
little
some.
longer than I wanted to, so now
No,
I'm going to have
no.
time for questions. I'm going to stop sharing, I guess.
Quite all right. I'm going to read through in the comment or the chat here, and we'll get to as many as we can. We'll probably try to stop around 8 or a little after, perhaps. But one thing that did just pop up. Someone asked, would you provide a link so we can get to the slides?
So I haven't published them. I can give them to you if you'd like. If you have
Yeah,
a post you
yeah.
want to
We could put it along with the recording if you don't mind. If you could.
I don't mind.
So,
I'll email you a PDF, and it will also have those
yeah. We'll
last slide. Yeah.
right. Yep, we'll figure that out. So by the way, this was recorded and it's going to be posted on the PICUP website. And so we'll put the a link to the slides or the PDF right by that. So
PDF is
that'll be
not
accessible.
accessible, Kelly.
Oh,
Very good.
well, okay. You're going to have to use AI to get to them then.
Yes, there you go.
So become a super agent and figure
Well,
it out.
honestly,
That's your
if
homework.
you can have the AI describe an image in full detail, it knows everything about an image. Not, you
Mhm.
don't need the accessibility anymore. Text.
All right.
And the AI can just tell you anything you want to know about the image. Even at pixel level, it can take an image of a graph and tell you with pixel level accuracy what's drawn there and the shape of the curve. So if a
Mhm.
student submits a say does a file upload of a graph they made with computation, and you're running an AI to look at their submissions in a quiz, the AI can assess very like a human what that file image says.
Right.
I'm not kidding.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, here's maybe a couple questions before we call it a night. Here's one. So these apps obviously have access to almost any file on your computer. Do you have security concerns about any info you might consider private? For example, student data, your pay stubs, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And your contacts and stuff. So I put some boundaries around that. You know, basically I have a big folder I called MATLAB, and you can do anything you want in MATLAB, but not anywhere else. Now there's another thing, sometimes you want the AI to install some system, ngrok or something, right? And that goes outside that area. And you have control of whether uh, command by command that it executes, whether you approve them or you can approve them forever if it's something sort of trivial and not malicious, like not writing a file or deleting a file or something. If it's just doing a directory, uh, that might be fine. But that's up to you. But yes, this is a serious concern. And I started out really timid about this, right?
Mhm.
And I didn't know whether it would just go haywire and start trashing everything. Right. Never mind sharing private information or anything like that. I've gotten more lax about it. But it's a serious thing, and you have to think about it very carefully. A lot of people are just, they're buying a Mac Mini. This is what a lot of people do. They just go out and buy a cheap Mac Mini, and they do all their AI work there, and it doesn't have anything else. So that's an approach.
Yeah,
But good question. Yeah.
yeah. Um, Aaron Titus are known amongst pickup circles as double Aaron. He asks, does it upload a QTI file to Canvas? And what's the quality of a multiple choice question in Canvas for modern physics?
The quality is great. When it creates one of these quizzes, it gives you all of the logic and the math that's needed to get to the answer. And then it explains why all the other answers are wrong. Right. And they're excellent. They're just excellent. Yeah. So QTI file, I'm not familiar with what that is, but yes, probably. What's a QTI file? You're
That's
more of an expert.
that's the format Canvas uses, sort of an exchange format, probably XML, I
Oh,
imagine.
well, so let me say, it can write and upload Canvas pages from scratch. So the answer is yes. Yes, it will write the whole thing from scratch if needed. And that's a lot faster, it turns out, than using an assistant to try to poke buttons and operate the UI. If it's more than a few buttons, it takes time and it gets confused about where it's poking and it goes off the rails. So it is much faster to just write Canvas from scratch and upload it. And it knows how to do that.
We got one more. This was from Michael Burns Caron. I'll read it. I saw articles saying that students could use agentic AI built into a browser to complete a course on Canvas and sent email to our CIO. Reply was that it would not work because integration and security. Have you actually had a student do such a thing?
Um, Not to my knowledge. I've done it myself. I mean, I've done an experiment myself. And Michael, I'd be interested to know if you would find out for me and email me what your CIO meant by that and what security and integration they have and how, what he might just mean is they're, not able to do this because of authentication, but in fact, that's not true. If you pre-authenticate any of the two browsers I meant, they both work. So it's not your authentication system into your university system that holds them out. If they have there are products out there that are looking for, repeated fast clicks to keep robots out, right? But you can tell the AI to, take her slow. You can also tell the AI, I only want a B plus on this quiz. Right? There are a lot of ways there's cat and mouse, right? That the AI can appear. It is doing exactly what a student does. It logs in as a student. It clicks a browser button just as a human would. Now, there are some traces that are left underneath that, certain security companies are trying to capitalize on. But as I say, it's a cat and mouse game. But so I don't know. The answer is I don't have a student tell me that they did that. And I don't want to, yeah, that's all I'll say.
Okay, well, I've got 8:01. It's been a pleasure, Duncan. Thanks a bunch for coming out, and everyone thanks for coming out tonight. Mr. Producer, you can stop the recording now.